Good evening and welcome everybody to this evening's meeting of the Environment, Community Safety and Engagement Scrutiny Commission, which is being held in person. My name is Councillor Esme Hicks and I'm the Chair of the Commission. Before we start the meeting, I've got a few housekeeping announcements to make. So there are no planned fire alarm tests this evening. If you hear the fire alarm, please leave by the nearest fire exit and make your way to the agreed assembly point, which is at St John's Churchyard off Druid Street. Council security staff will be available to direct you. The public toilets are located off the main reception area. Please switch your mobile phone to silent whilst in the meeting room. And this meeting has been live streamed to the Southwark Council YouTube channel via the Zoom platform. A recording of the meeting will also be viewable on YouTube after the meeting has ended. And may I remind members to raise your hand if you wish to speak, and please wait until I have given you permission to speak before contributing. Members of the public are welcome to record, screenshot or post the public proceedings of the meeting, and a copy of the Council's protocol for reporting and filming is available on the Southwark website. So we'll get started with the agenda. Apologies, we have a number of apologies this evening. So I've got apologies from Councillor Graham Neal, Councillor David Parton, Councillor Leo Pollock and Councillor Maggie Browning. So we'll just move on to the confirmation of voting members. So please can members present in the room and the Scrutiny Project Manager please introduce yourself. So I've already introduced myself. Sabina, you want to put?
I'm Councillor Sabina Emmanuel Peckham Ward and currently
And I'm Julie Timbrell, the Project Manager for the Commission.
Thank you. So that takes us on to notification of any items of business which the Chair deems urgent. There are no urgent items this evening. And on to disclosure of interests and dispensations. Does any member wish to declare any interests or dispensations in respect of any item of business to be considered at this meeting? No. Okay. On to the minutes. So the minutes of the meeting held on the 3rd of February will be circulated for agreement following this meeting. So that takes us on to the first substantive item, and we've got the annual interview to take place with the Cabinet Member for Climate Emergency, Jobs and Transport, Councillor John Batson, and the Deputy Cabinet Member for a Cleaner Southwark, Councillor Mark Newens, alongside the following officer reports which were circulated in advance. So we had one on recycling and food recycling, council estate pilots, fly tipping and seasonal upkeep of roads and pavements, for example gritting, leaf clearance. So if you'd like to come forward and take a seat please. Thank you. And we'll do a quick round of intros if it's okay, so we're clear on who's who. So if you wouldn't mind just starting at this end, we'll work our way through.
My name is Alan Richards, Strategic Director of Environment, Sustainability and Leisure.
Councillor John Batson, Cabinet Member for Climate Emergency, Jobs and Transport.
Councillor Mark Newens, Deputy Cabinet Member for a Cleaner Southwark, and lately I have taken on an additional, I've taken an additional responsibility for waste in the borough following the resignation of Councillor McCash.
Hello, my name is Michael McNicholas. I'm the Head of Waste and Cleaning.
Brilliant, thank you. So there were a number of reports circulated in advance. Is there anything you wanted to say in relation to those topics or on those reports before we launch into questions? Or anything else in relation to your briefs, actually?
So originally I was planning to speak a little bit to the estates fly tipping piece as part of the place management programme, and then I was going to pass over to officers for the rest of the items on waste. I'm happy to go ahead with that.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. So obviously, so yes, there's been reports really outlining the details of the programme that's been circulated. It was put together, the place management programme was put together about, over a year ago, really aimed at focusing in on some of the waste management hotspots, problem areas across the borough. And in principle, that was some of our high streets, including particularly looking at flats above shops, graffiti on our high streets, and then also looking at our council estates, and there was a project covering seven estates, looking specifically at bin infrastructure on those estates, and another project covering fly tipping on estates for a different 7 estates, and looking at how we could tackle those problems. And those 2 estates programmes now have been put together because that obviously made sense. The programme has behind it a revenue budget of £1 million under a capital budget of £1.4 million, which is being focused on the revenue side at funding additional project managers and enforcement officers, and then on the capital side looking at designing out measures and also redeployable CCTV cameras and other measures. Yeah, that's. I mean, I'm happy to sort of stop there and focus on the report. But yeah, that's. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything, John, you wanted to say in relation to your brief?
I suppose quickly with regards to the winter schedule around specifically ice, just to say really that we are very focused in terms of the forecast, in terms of like what is, how likely is it that ice will be a hazard the kind of following day. There was clearly a challenge at the start of January where not just in Southwark but across London there were issues of sort of the weather being different to the forecast, which kind of caught some areas out. And so there was, the council did respond to that in terms of getting contractors to make sure that we were salting some of those roads. By the time we did that, there was some of that ice had appeared. And so I think we are clearly very, we've got a process where we focus on the forecast, but there were obviously challenges at the start of January. And I think just with the kind of leaf collection, what's challenging is that every season is quite different. I mean, obviously with the climate emergency brief that I have as well, we had a hotter summer than usual. It meant that we had an earlier fall than usual. It also kind of meant that a lot of the leaves fell in a smaller period of time. So the feedback that I had from residents actually was that we were better at leaf collecting this year, but it was probably a little bit easier because it wasn't over such a long period of time. But we do have a schedule in place that's transparent. It's on the website. People can see when their roads are going to be, when leaves are going to be collected from the roads. But also the challenge is that if it's wetter, then the leaves create a more challenging kind of surface for us to clear away. So I suppose they're the only things I would add to the report.
Thank you. On to questions. Any questions? If you could pop your mic on, Sabina, please. Thank you.
Someone said to me today they wanted to dispose of a sofa, and when they look up the websites and everything, it's £37 to take it away. I thought it was free.
No. Gelato. Yep. So we introduced charges for the collection of bulky waste back in 2015. Yes, we did. So prior to that, it was free of charge. And so since that point, the charge was introduced, and it's for up to 10 items. So if you've only got one item to collect, then it might not seem like good value, but it is for up to 10 large items. For anyone who has the ability to take their waste, their bulky waste, to the Household Waste Recycling Centre at Devon Street, it can be disposed of there free of charge, although I appreciate that's not always going to be possible for people that don't have a car big enough to take it there, or a friend or a relative who would be able to do it for them. But yes, there is a charge for the collection of bulky waste items now.
Can I come a little bit on that as well? So I think that the point of there being being able to dispose of 10 items in one go is really important. And what we have seen in some areas is that you'll have resident WhatsApp groups that someone will announce that they have a piece of bulky waste they want to get rid of, and then other people will chip in. And if, at a £5 a go, you can get rid of items. And I think that is the way it can work, but appreciate that sometimes it doesn't. I think the debate around the introduction of the charge in the first place was that when it was free, you would have vans driving around the borough expecting to pick up waste on order, and because it was free, people, I forgot to put it out this morning, not to worry, I'll do it next time, and it wasn't actually working very efficiently at all. So I know from a budget, when we've looked at the budget every year, I remember it being as a councillor, this is something that is always discussed, but I think on balance the decision has always been taken that it is something that is worth charging for those reasons. I think one of the things that I would like to see within and certainly within the estates programme that we're looking at now, there are other options. There are charity shops. The British Heart Foundation goes around and picking up furniture that's decent for free as well. So I think it's a really good idea to start advertising those options as well, alongside the service that is provided by the council, and also really pushing this idea that you can get 10 items for the price of one. There you go.
Thank you. I will let the tenants know about the 10 items rather than the one item. And I did use the Heart Foundation when my dad passed away. I gave them the fridge, the cooker, and everything.
Thank you. Did you want to come in?
I think you mentioned just fly tipping there as well, and so there was an opinion that if you charged for waste, people won't pay it and we'd leave them on the street. Whether it's free or not, the people who usually do that will just leave them on the street anyway. So I commissioned Keep Britain Tidy to do a report for us when another authority in London to see whether there's any correlation on charged bulky goods and an increase in fly tip, and they confirmed there was no correlation. So whether it's free or not, they'll just throw it on the street. It's the type of person who would do that, and so there is no correlation.
And that's interesting. So one thing I thought was remarkable in the report was the instance of reporting of fly tipping has gone up quite a lot, but the volume of fly tipped waste is decreasing. Is that correct? Because that was where I was going to go, was what's the connection in terms of the charging versus then the level of fly tipping? I guess that suggests that it's not correlated. Did you want to come in on that? Go for it, Margie.
I mean, I was going to say that I think the statistics around increasing reports are likely to be strongly linked to the introduction of the Fix My Street service. So, and actually that shows that yes, reporting has gone up without that proportional increase in the volume. So it clearly means that the Fix My Street is working quite well. I don't know if there's other.
Yeah, and just on that point, Fix My Street people are more ready to report smaller items which are left on the streets where they previously wouldn't have, and that would explain why the tonnages is not as high as we expect.
Understood. Thank you. That's helpful. I had a question in relation to Fix My Street. So I think it's been a brilliant thing that's been introduced, and you can see through the level of engagement that residents find it very useful as well. I noticed there was a section in the report regarding updates to Fix My Street and improvements, and I just wondered if there was a latest update on when the ability to challenge a case closure might be available. So I think we've probably all heard from residents where they've reported whether it's fly tipping or whatever it might be, and then they get a report saying it's been closed, or they go on and check that it's been closed, and actually it's not been closed to their satisfaction. I had an example myself where I reported a bin that was the bag was repeatedly being ripped apart by foxes that lived on the estate right next door. The bin was by a bus stop. The action taken by the council then was to move the bin to the opposite side of the road, away from the bus stop, still within reach of the foxes, but out of reach of residents waiting at the bus stop to put rubbish in. So it was then moved back, actually, but the issue wasn't resolved, but it was closed on Fix My Street. So that ability to, in terms of quality of the response, and then residents' ability to challenge a case closure just to drive up that quality? Is there a latest update on that?
Yeah, so we've just recently re-let the contract for the provision of the Fix My Street service. So that runs for another 2.5 years till October 2029. 2028. And so we're working with the service provider to make lots of different improvements. So that's one of the improvements that we want to make. But there's also a number of other improvements that we do want to make as well. We're learning as we go along from the use of this tool. And we're really pleased that residents have engaged with it, but we're conscious that we have had some of that negative feedback. And you're right, in Appendix D, a number of things that we've already done to improve the use of Fix My Streets are listed there, and there are also a number of things that we're looking to implement in the foreseeable future. The specific point that you raised about being able to challenge an individual report, if I can take that away and I can check the details about how far down the road we are progressed towards that, then I'll be able to give that response to you. I couldn't give you a date right now for that specific question.
In the report, there's a mention of 6 months, within the next 6 months. So
Okay.
it's quite imminent.
Okay, well that's good. I just wanted to probe on that particular one in particular because it's something that I hear from residents a lot. And just as a follow-up, how are we planning to involve residents in those improvements? Because I guess that's the best way. They're the end users. That's the best way of fleshing out the improvements to the service.
Yeah, so one of the improvements that we're looking to make is to introduce a simple feedback mechanism where people can press a red sad face, a yellow neutral face and a green smiley face to start getting resident feedback about whether they were happy with the way that we handled their particular report. That's a first step towards us looking for more detailed feedback from residents. We did discuss with the service provider adding the possibility for people to give a written feedback as to why they pressed green or why they pressed red. We felt that that might be too much too quickly, so we're going with the red, yellow and red, amber and green to start with, and then we're going to look at potentially having a development from there where people can give a written response to say why they were unhappy or what aspect they were unhappy about. The other thing that we can do, and we've talked about this as well, is where people do make reports and they're happy to give their email address, because you can make a report anonymously, but then we can't give you feedback, or you can make a report and give us your email address. So the other thing that we've been thinking about is to write to a selection of those people using their email address to ask them about their experience and to give us any feedback that we might be able to use to improve the use of the system.
Super, thank you.
Just to add on that one, the neighbourhood forums, we sell the Fix My Street. We give them the QR code, people download it, and that is a really good forum for people to say, yeah, I've got it, but I've got these problems. So then I make a note to them, or the other officers make a note to them, we feed it to close the loop then. And one of the others was a job being closed down, but it's still there. And there were a number of reasons for that, because it was on private land, but that was not explained to the resident. So the neighbourhood forums has been a really good forum to actually understand from the users themselves.
Great, that's good to hear. Sabina?
What measure would you put if there's consistent fly tipping in an area? It's been cleared, then the next day they find another batch there, then they cleared, and then you're doing your job, but they're still putting it there. What measures have you put in place? Do you then put signs saying, they'll be prosecuted and you're being watched or something, just to deter them?
Okay, so one of the things that Fix My Street is really useful for is to be able to get, the top 10 most reported locations to give us an idea, where is it that people are reporting fly tipping the most. I think just picking up on the point that you made, Chair, there's two sides to every fly tip. One is to get it picked up, and the other one is to try and understand why it's happening and what measures maybe are needed to stop it happening in future. And that's kind of dealt with here in the reports that are on the table, the Cleaner Southwark programme, enforcement work, redeployable CCTV, and the use of crime tape and other measures that we're putting in place. So if a particular location gets reported a lot on Fix My Street, or if actually we get feedback from our own teams or from complaints, also from members' inquiries. So there's a number of members' inquiries which, if they become repeated, we start having a look at that as being a location that maybe we need to bring these other measures into play. I suppose the challenge is that at any one time there's going to be a number of locations like this, but our resource to deal with it and bring in that cross-service approach, because you're involved in enforcement, you're involved in housing, you're involved in waste, you're involved in street cleaning. So getting that cross-service support, which is what we're doing as part of the place management programme, is always going to be a challenge because of the number of locations that are getting reported. But what you'll see in the report is that once we've brought those resources to bear on a location and we've made an assessment that we think that we've actually resolved that issue, then we're looking for, okay, we've got a pipeline of what's the next one that we need to bring that focus on. So it's not as if the list is always getting smaller, it's kind of one finished, one will start. And it's very much based on the reports that come from Fix My Street, the complaints, the members' inquiries, and also feedback from our own cleaning teams, because we've got 650 people out there. They'll tell us when there's a location that's suffering badly from fly tipping. So we've got really good intelligence about that.
Thank you. And to come in specifically on the place management programme part, so the idea, so for example, I've been on the Howard estate today with officers, with a member of the TRA, and we have specifically gone round and the TRA has said, this is the area where there's a problem, this one works okay. It's really sort of, the idea was to deal, and ward council is also a very important resource for information as well on this in terms of that particular programme, to really explore where those problem locations are. As I said, there are 14 estates now that we are specifically focused on. And the idea is that over time, having identified where those hotspots are, we then try and see what we can do in behaviour change. So that's working with the TRA, that's communications, that's putting out information to all residents to make sure that they know what they are meant to be doing with their rubbish, and that they are aware of the penalties for not doing it. In some instances, it's also the case. So, for example, looking around the Aylesbury estate, as we were a couple of weeks ago, looking at where you could perhaps introduce measures which would stop people coming into the estate from elsewhere to fly tip. So it's looking at all those things, but ultimately, as far as working with residents concerned, there has to be a good investment in time for behaviour change, and then we have to look very much at enforcement. And the idea of the programme is what they are supposed to be doing, but then ultimately we do have to enforce, and that will be what is expected.
Thank you. I just had one build on just the point around the interventions that you mentioned, particularly in some of the estate pilots. So the signage, the crime scene tape, etc. So I know, I just wondered, is there anything that we're doing that is innovative around the signage and the how we try and drive that behaviour change? Because I guess we've all seen shouty no fly tipping signs, and I'm just thoughtful about the effectiveness of those versus some studies have shown that it's more about creating like a pride in a particular area, or having that feel like it's well loved more than sort of, it's like the something that's come up in our commission meetings before is the no ball game sign. Well, it's better to direct somebody to where they can do something positive rather than tell them not to do something negative. So I just wondered if is there anything we're thinking differently about in terms of that signage point, maybe working with behavioural science or some of those elements to try and drive up the effectiveness of that rather than maybe just repeating some of the things that we've done previously.
So, yeah, I think the use of signs probably has an immediate effect for a few days, but then the signs just become part of a no fly tipping sign and some fly tipping underneath. So we've tried to look at what other boroughs have done. The use of this crime scene tape is fairly new here. And we've also looked at Keep Britain Tidy and reports that they've done about where they've done things differently to try and reduce fly tipping. I think the crime scene tape, the signs, the enforcement, the communications with residents, they're sort of standard things now that we're doing and other boroughs are doing. Behavioural science, no, I don't think we've sort of gone down that route yet. But obviously we're open to innovations and different ways of doing things. But yeah, creating that pride in your area so that actually it would feel wrong to do fly tipping. That's I suppose that's the that would be the good situation to get into. But we've not looked at behavioural science at the moment.
Although we work very closely with the comms team to look at the best campaigns across London and beyond, which are the most effective in terms of promoting behaviour change. And we include that as part of our comms programme as well.
Can I say so? I mean, so in terms of comms, I think that being around a lot of the estates, as we have been, you see quite sort of standard signs. I think some of the comms that we're looking to roll out with this are not standard. They're a little bit different, and possibly in some ways, or we hope, obviously, in some ways, they will be more hard-hitting. I think on the behaviour change side, so we have had some really positive feedback from some of the TRAs who want to be properly involved in that, which is fantastic, and it has to be. I'm sure there is a place for sort of introducing behavioural science approach, but also we have residents who I think peer pressure actually could play a significant role in terms of putting in place positives rather than negatives. We have also looked at, in some instances, putting in planters to try and, as you say, make the area more attractive, and then perhaps potentially that would be less likely to be fly tipped. But there are, I think it's fair to say that, all these things are up for grabs. It's really, the idea is of the pilot is to experiment where, within reason where we can, and if there are good ideas coming forward, we explore whether they can be used to good effect. And learn from that.
Thank you. And just building on that, so I know from reading the report, the dates of the various pilots that are happening, they're sort of just kicking off in terms of actually the action plans that are being implemented. When would be a good time to come back to this commission with an update on how that's going?
I think there is a busy time over the next 3 or 4 months. I think I would hope that, another thing to bear in mind is that some of the original 7 estates where we were focusing on actual bin infrastructure, Metro stores have been ordered for many of those, so there will be new bin infrastructure being introduced hopefully during March. And we would then expect there to be a period of making sure that residents are used to that new infrastructure, and get to a point where, I don't know, perhaps in sort of 3 or 4 months' time after that you would be looking at enforcement. Perhaps sometime in the summer might be useful.
Great, thank you. Obviously, it'll be a newly constituted commission by that point, but it's helpful to get that signpost. Thank you. I had some further questions just on the seasonal clearance piece, if that's okay. So, really helpful report just to get a sense of how the gritting and the leaf clearance works and the policies that we have at the moment. So, a couple of points I just wanted to probe on. I might have missed it, but if I read it correctly, as I understand it, there's not a direct link between the council's Streets for People strategy and the active travel priority routes that were identified as part of that work and the sort of key routes for, I'm thinking particularly cycleways and footpaths, the key routes that we need to keep clear in terms of ice and leaf fall. And I just wondered, is there a, given that the council has a big priority around creating safe and healthy journeys, all the vision around Streets for People, is that something that we're missing, or have I missed that within the report? I think there's an element of it in the resilience routes, if I've understood correctly, but it didn't seem to be directly referenced in the policy.
The main cycle route is gritted as part of the main highways networks, and within the appendices of the report shows the risk matrix, and so we look at the end of every summer we then review the programme, because there was a number of complaints that came in that while the road was clear, some of the cycleways they're using weren't cleared and they were dangerous. So we will need to review that, but we don't have we've got a finite resource. We will need to be very careful because it's the roads around the hospitals, the health centres, those are the ones which usually take priority, and the main routes. But we have that risk matrix at the bottom, but we've had a lot of feedback in terms of the cycleways, and that's something we will take into consideration. But there's only one cycleway which is gritted constantly, and we will just need to review that at the end of every winter, which is probably now.
Thank you. And the footpaths as well?
Most footpaths, we don't have the resources to grit every single footpath, but we do have the main routes into the high streets and the surrounding streets. And for example, on January the 6th, when we'd gritted all the footpaths around the main roads, not all of them, not in the borough, we simply can't do that. Then rain came, washed the grit away, immediately froze. And then instead of having the street cleaners cleaning the road, we just gave them salt, and 6 tons of salt was used in order to get rid of the black ice. But most of the footpaths, the main footpaths along the high streets and next to them are gritted, but not all the footpaths in the borough by any means. And I think within the appendices of the report, so there's an indication of the map of where they are, which was our priority. We are reactive as well, so if we do get a lot of complaints about a particular stretch, we try to see what we can do, and then we deploy resources to grit then. But again, we do have a finite resource.
Thank you, that's helpful. I appreciate the finite resource, and it's obviously with the seasonal element as well, it's got to be deployable in a dynamic way, so I appreciate that. The other element that I didn't clock in the report was just in terms of an equalities assessment around the policy. So I just wondered to what extent that's been completed around the policy. And I'm particularly coming at this from the angle of, I know that other municipalities, elsewhere, not necessarily the UK, have found brilliant benefits by thinking differently about how they do their road and footpath and cycleway gritting. So there's an example in Sweden, Karlskoga, they had a snow clearing policy which historically prioritised the main roads, which are historically driven largely by majority men, and over footpaths which are walked more by women, children and elderly people, and actually sort of flipping the way that they thought about the equalities as part of that policy meant that it resulted in sort of fewer women and children and elderly people being injured in falls on footpaths versus, obviously, I understand the point in the report around the potentially higher speed impacts, and that is more dangerous on roads. But just having a look at that from an equalities lens, and particularly a gender and age lens, meant that they saw benefits in terms of cutting health costs, for example. I appreciate that's not something that falls on the council directly, but I just wondered if that's something that we've looked at previously, how that equalities assessment stacks up on that policy.
I don't think we've done an ENIA on it, but if you look at page 49, some of the resilient network, it picks up on some of the equalities of the population of some of the facilities. But that is a point in this, Michael. You've got something, that's the point we will take away and see whether we could look at putting inequalities impact and try to change our approach here.
Yeah, I'm just looking at Appendix 1, and it does list a number of risks. And in there it includes things like proximity to rest centres, GP surgeries, care homes. So I suppose it is there, but it's not obviously an equalities needs assessment as such. So it's probably something to take away and have a look at, just to make sure that all of the protected characteristics have been looked at to see that they've been included here, and if not, because that would be something to look at for the next winter service plan for the winter that starts later on this year.
I'd appreciate that if you could take that away as a recommendation from the Commission. That would be great. Thank you. Sabina.
It's not all bad. I just want to say a thank you this time for taking some of the leaves off the sidewalk, because most of the people, because it's been so wet, that would have been a real hazard. But because the leaves were cleared, there was nothing to be mushy and slippery. So therefore it was much safer. And now that certain projects, they want to have gardens along the high street. So they collect the leaves, put it in bags, black bags, and they demarcate, and then they use the leaves to redo their garden. So that's happening in my ward. So that's a good thing. It's not always all bad.
Thank you, Sabina. I just had one further question, if I may. So Councillor Browning was keen to be here but couldn't make it at short notice, and she was keen that I raise a point around the Peckham gyratory works that are in the works at the moment. So residents have raised with her that I think there has been a 3-week consultation around the changes there, but lots of residents have felt locally that they haven't had a full opportunity to input to the plan, so they're very keen to hold a public meeting. So John particularly wanted to ask whether you'd be willing to meet with local residents and local ward councillors in relation to the changes there.
There was, my understanding, there was an informal consultation. No decision has been done because we had a lot of objections. We really need to look at those objections. And then I think, given the timing, it's unlikely there'll be another consultation now until for another 3 months. But I think we need to take stock on all these objections and how we can mitigate it, if we can mitigate against it, and then we will take a measured opinion before we ever go out and consult again. So I think we're in the, okay, there's quite a lot of objections here. We need to digest this to understand what those are and then take it forward at a later date, but it won't be happening now.
Understood. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just to follow up from that, I think there's been quite a few objections from businesses along Rye Lane, and obviously that is the other part of my brief. It's obviously a challenging one because there is a need to improve bus journeys along Rye Lane, but it's also a high street where there's lots of businesses, and so there is a real challenge in terms of how those businesses get their goods. And so I haven't seen the breakdown of all the objections, but I'm pretty confident a number of them will be from the businesses. So happy to do a public meeting at the right time, whether that is over the next few weeks is probably something we can take away, because in reality there would need to be another round of consultation anyway, and if there's going to be another round, it might be that a public meeting is better at that point rather than now.
Thank you. Noted. It'd be good as a minimum, I guess, to make sure that local residents are aware of that time frame, because I know how easily rumour can run in terms of, the council aren't listening, so the sooner we can at least communicate that to residents that there will be an opportunity for a meeting, the better. Did you want to come back on that before I go to Councillor Manuel?
I was just saying to Aled, we'll just think about the best way to do that and whether there are mechanisms, existing events or ward forums and things like that where we can promote, where we can communicate that. But absolutely hear you. I think one way to do it is through ward councillors, but we'll think about other ways that we can communicate that time frame, because obviously uncertainty brings rumours, and rumours are never helpful. So we'll think about the best way to provide some clarity for residents and businesses.
Super, thank you. Sabina, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I was just thinking in terms of the gritting, you say the rain will come and figure. Also, the drains are in a terrible state. So when the cars pass, they wash it off anyway. So if we get the drains unblocked, that is another way of you saving money because the ice will stay on the pavement rather than go in the drains. Water.
Yeah, I can answer that one. So the street cleaning and grounds maintenance service, which includes estate cleaning, is an in-house service, and we also run the gully emptying service as well on behalf of the highways team. And we've recently put in a bid for additional resources for our gully emptying programme. The best thing to do is if obviously we do proactive maintenance, so we have a schedule that we go round, and it's prioritised according to the location as to how often it needs to be done. So, for example, in a market area, we would clear the gullies there much more often because they tend to get filled up with detritus much more quickly than a gully on a normal residential road. So we do have higher schedules for higher risk locations, but sometimes we might miss a gully because there's a car parked on it when we turned up to do it, and then that gully becomes blocked. So Fix My Streets, if you do know that there's a gully that needs to be cleared, if you report it on Fix My Streets, that will help us to try and identify that and make sure that we get that cleared. Southampton Way, all of it.
If you could pop your mic on, Sabina, sorry.
Sorry, Southampton Way, you have to look two sides. By you doing the funeral parlour, there's water mass there because most of the leaves go down the drain. If they do any job there, you see most of the leaves go down the drain, it's blocked. And you have to look quickly to see where the car is and run across before you get soaked. So it's really bad, especially for the older people. When they're trying to navigate it, they get wet.
Sorry, did you say by the funeral parlour?
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
You do.
I'll get onto that tomorrow.
Lovely, thank you. Any further questions? No. Margie, did you want to come back?
Yes, just very quickly to refer to when you thought it would be a good time to report back on the place management programme. And after a brief conference with Michael, I think it's our collective view that the summer may be a little early, and it would be better to focus on the autumn, really. That would give a better opportunity to sort of see the impact of the work that is being done. I think I was just so enthusiastic to come back, so thank you.
Enthusiasm noted. No, brilliant. Thank you, Margie. If there are no further questions, thank you very much for your time. Much appreciated. Good conversation. I know there are a few things that you're going to take away and come back to us on. So, thank you. So we'll move on to our next item, which is item 6, and we have some colleagues from Tideway who are going to present on some of the improvements to amenity and biodiversity of the River Thames foreshore following the opening of the London Super Sewer. And I think we've got Alan Summerskill, Programme Completion and Closeout Manager, joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Right, if you permit me, I'll just try and link up to present a few slides,
Fantastic,
if that's
thank
okay,
you.
by joining the meeting, so let's see how this pans out. But yeah, thanks for inviting me.
You might have the wrong list.
Oh. Yeah, the link I've got says someone will let you in when the meeting starts. So.
Yeah, it's the wrong one. We have
Oh.
we have a link for
Oops.
the right people and a link for the room.
Right. Okay.
Do you want to manually type it at all?
Yes, it's Alan.
I can read it out for you.
Yeah, I mean, if you're comfortable to drive, I'm more than comfortable to narrate. Right, okay, thank you very much. Okay, right, thank you very much. Yes, thanks for inviting me for the opportunity to talk today about the Tideway project. I've got about 10 or 15 slides or so just to give you a little bit of background, a little bit of an update on where we are, and I suppose maybe highlight hopefully some of the positive things about what the project's delivered. So yeah, if you perhaps move on to the next slide, please, Julie. Cheers. Thank you. So effectively London's drainage system, it really relies and dates back to the lost rivers of London. So as well as the River Thames, obviously there's a number of sort of tributaries that fed into it. Pre-industrial revolution, basically everyone was using these rivers for two main things. One, to source drinking water, and two, to use it as sort of waste disposal, really. Which meant when London was relatively small, it wasn't too much of an issue. But as London grew during the industrial revolution, more and more people were doing this, which basically meant that the rivers were no more than open sewers. So the peak of this was in 1858, when there was the great stink, so that meant that the river was that polluted and the stench was so bad that Parliament had to decamp away from the House of Parliament for a while. So they tasked Sir Joseph Bazalgette, shown here in the bottom left image, basically to build a new series of sewers which would serve London into the future. So the image in the top right, the old black and white photo, that sort of shows one of the sewers under construction. And to give a sense of perspective, I mean, this is sort of late 1800s. There are over 300 million bricks used, and he built approximately 1,000 or just over 1,000 miles of new sewers and around 80 or so of new trunk sewers, which are shown in the top left image by the black lines. So when he put the system together, he built in something called CSOs, or combined sewer overflows, which act as a pressure relief, or like an overflow point, which basically meant when it was raining, because London has got, he built a combined system, which means the sewers take foul water away from your property, but they also take typically the rainwater that falls on the streets. So during dry conditions, this is okay. When we have more and more rainfall falling onto more and more areas of hard standing, these CSOs, or these combined sewer overflows, they discharge into the river, and basically it reduces the amount of sewage potentially backing up into people's properties. So the image that's shown in the bottom right is an old image now, because obviously we've built some construction works, but it shows sort of one of the CSOs locating adjacent to Vauxhall Bridge. So as you can see, what's coming out of there, without being crude, is rainwater plus whatever you can flush down a loo, flush down your sink. Nothing's treated. It's basically just diluted sewage. So in a typical year, there's hundreds of millions, or there were hundreds of millions of tonnes of untreated sewage that were discharged into the river. So if you're okay to pan to the next slide, if that's okay, thanks. So in summary, basically, we had a twofold image, really, or a twofold sort of mission statement, for want of a better word. One is to create a new sewer that's suitable for London to prevent the discharges going into the River Thames. And secondly, to sort of try to reconnect London more with the river. Obviously, we're aware of, historically, there's been a bit of a disconnect between Londoners and those that live and work in the city to the River Thames. So this was aimed at trying to reconnect, i.e. make Londoners try and fall back in love with the River Thames and not treat it as a sewage potential waste or dumping ground, really. So you're okay to go to the next slide, please, Julie, thanks. So I've got some very sort of basic graphics here to show how the system works. So on the left-hand side, before, you can see all the sewage from houses and streets typically goes into the smaller circle that's shown on the left-hand side. If there's too much rainfall, or if those sewers are sort of beaten and surcharge or fill up to capacity, it will then flow into the larger circle that's showed on the image on the left-hand side, which is sort of Bazalgette's new system. new system in mid-1800s. And then when that system was beaten, the excess would then flow into the River Thames. What we've built is shown on the right-hand side. Effectively, we've built a number of sort of what we call CSO drop shafts, which are large vertical shafts built either inland or typically in the foreshore. They intercept the sewage before it's discharged into the river and then convey it via a series of underground tunnels and systems and hydraulic chambers into a new tunnel that we've built underneath the River Thames. So if you go to the next slide, if you would please, thanks. So this sort of shows an image of a typical site. So this particular site is the is the Victoria site opposite the London Line, central London. So you can sort of see a shallowish sort of rectangular box, not the one with the underground in it, but the rectangular box to the left of the one with the train in it. That is one of our new hydraulic structures. It intercepts the existing sewer and then conveys the intercepted sewage through a series of underground chambers into a large cylindrical drop shaft, which then conveys the flow in a controlled manner down to the invert of that shaft, and then in this particular image along a short connection tunnel before getting to the main tunnel that we've constructed underneath the River Thames. So it's challenging stuff. If you're okay with the next slide, please, Julia. So this gives an overview of the project. So the new tunnel is 25 kilometres in length. So it goes all the way from what's shown in the purple on the left-hand side, the number 1, which is our Acton Storm Tank site, and then goes through central London, following roughly the alignment of the River Thames, up until you get to where it's highlighted as number 17, which is one of our shafts located to this area here, which is at Chambers Wharf. And then the tunnel then goes up towards Abbey Mills, where it connects into an existing tunnel that was constructed by Thames Water about 10 years ago or so. So we've had approximately 23 construction sites on the job, and obviously it's been sort of quite challenging engineering, really. To give you a sense of scale, on the left-hand side at Acton we're around 30 metres deep, and then we'll be connecting to Abbey Mills, we're around 70 or so metres deep, so we're the deepest tunnel in London. We've gone underneath all the tube tunnels, underneath all the other existing infrastructure. If you're okay to go to the next slide then, please, Julie, cheers. Oops. So just to give a flavour, our most local site to this area here is our Chambers Wharf site. We utilise that as a tunnel drive site, which basically means in construction terms we sunk a shaft, we lowered in a new tunnel boring machine, and we launched that tunnel boring machine to go up towards Abbey Mills. And at the same time, there was a tunnel boring machine that was launched at our Curling Street site near our Battersea Power Station that was made its way towards Chambers Wharf. Just to give you a sense of scale, obviously it's challenging, complex engineering, and obviously we were limited by various site constraints sort of available in the London area. So this particular site at Chambers Wharf, we temporarily had to build out in the river, build a cofferdam. What's shown on the image here is a picture circa around 2021, 2022, when we were sort of at our peak of tunnelling. So that was when the site was at its busiest. And obviously we've had a number of sort of what we call mitigation measures in place, basically to sort of minimise our impact on the local residents and the local community, really. But effectively that site's been up and running for around 10 years. We're now in the tail end of construction, which I'll come on to more in a minute. So if you went past the road now, it would look dramatically different to what it looks like in the picture at the moment. If you're okay, Julie, for the next slide, please. Cheers. So I've just sort of cherry-picked out some images here, really, to give you a sense of scale. So the top 2 images on the right-hand side, that sort of show the tunnel. First one, which has got the sort of yellow ventilation tube on the soffit of the tunnel, that shows it during construction. The image on the right has the site member of staff walking through on the right-hand side. That shows it after we've done our secondary lining. Obviously, the tunnel is now dark. Obviously, there's no lights in there, so that was one of the last images taken of the tunnel before it came online. And just to sort of highlight some of the images and give a sense of scale of some of the work we've been doing, the bottom right image shows Chambers Wharf, where we received our Selina. All tunnel machines or tunnel boring machines have a name. This particular one was called Selina Fox, after a sort of local female pioneer. And that shows the delivery of the machine onto site during COVID. So we shouldn't forget a lot of this construction was done during a worldwide pandemic. So it was challenging, complicated stuff. The image on the left shows the recovery of one of the TBMs. I mentioned one of our other tunnel and boring machines that made its way safely from Kirtling Street to our Chambers Wharf site. That shows the TBM being basically taken out of the ground and obviously lifted up on one of the largest floating cranes in Europe, sort of in the early hours of the morning, if you saw them before being taken away from site. If you go to the next slide, please, Julie. So specifically for our Chambers Wharf, as I highlighted, it was a very complicated, busy site, slap bang adjacent to hundreds of local residents. So we had a number of sort of site-specific mitigation measures really in place. So it's things like under our Section 106, there was over £6 million given to the London Borough of Southwark for local schools, other highway improvements, other sort of local projects. Of that £6 million, £1 million was dedicated to something called a Community Enhancement Fund. That was a site-specific and the only site across the project where we had this, where members of the local community could put forward local schemes to improve their local area. That would then be reviewed by almost like a Dragon's Den style of panels of members of the local community. And if successful, then progress via a dedicated officer through Southwark, sort of because the scheme was administered by Southwark, to sort of deliver hopefully positive things in the local area. So I'd like to think that was a success. I haven't got the exact stats, but they are available if required. But if you walked around the area now, there's significant areas and significant replanting that's been done, sort of be it improving public open realm, new playgrounds, improvements to sort of habitats and sort of in the local area. So hopefully the area is looking a lot better. We also had many aspects that we call more by river. So we, under our planning permission, under our development consent order, we had specified materials we needed to move by river. We challenged our main works contractors to say, well, you need to do that by river. What else can we do by river? So things like all our cofferdam materials, the sheet piles, the aggregates, the reinforcing cages, that all came and went by river. That could have gone on road, but we certainly didn't want to bring it in by road if we could avoid it. Our tunnelling machine, specifically for Chambers Wharf, you'll see on the image there, that TBM, that was sailed all the way from its Heron Connect, the manufacturers in Germany, by vessel, which I'm not going to say it's a world first, but it certainly was a UK first. So normally you assemble them in the basically in the factory. It undergoes commissioning. It's then disassembled onto multiple lorries. If you saw it, it's then driven all the way to wherever the tunnelling site is, and then reassembled. To avoid that process and avoid all those multiple lorries, we sailed it in. So effectively what you can see there on the image is a vessel called the Skylift 3000, which again is capable of lifting units up to 3,000 tonnes in weight. That was towed across the British Channel from where it was shipped basically where it was stored in Holland. And obviously, effectively, we encourage the local community to go out and see it, because you won't see this again in your life. Unlikely to see this again in your lifetime, really. Other things, a lot of our noisy plants and equipment we housed in noise enclosures, which enabled us to do 24/7 working. So basically that's a big shed, for want of a better word, with many, many layers of acoustic protection, which means on the inside it's noisy, but on the outside we could have this conversation and you couldn't hear it. You couldn't hear the noise inside. Another thing that was pretty much a European first is when we sunk our shafts, we utilised a piece of a kit called a hydrophrase, which basically excavates vertical columns down into the ground. Normally they're powered by diesel, which means there's noisy aspects to it. There's obviously an air quality issue as well. We modified one of those pieces of equipment to mean it was electrically powered. So again, I think that was probably a European first. To minimise the impact on the local community, we had many things. Typical things were weekly visitor centre, so residents could come in and find out what's going on, weekly newsletters, regular community liaison working group meetings, specific information sheets, off-site mitigation measures, which are things like installing secondary glazing. What we did have on this project, which again is quite unusual, we had something called an independent compensation panel, which basically meant if a local resident had specific personal circumstances, which meant they were maybe more affected to noise, dust, traffic or vibration, they could apply for specific mitigation. And that could be things like secondary glazing, it could be periods of daily respite. So if it was noisy, we effectively would fund them to go out and get away from the house, like for a few hours during the day, to short-term rehousing. And in some aspects, if you had quite significant personal circumstances, you could be long-term rehoused at the cost of the project. So we have had a number of residents that were rehoused for a number of years, obviously brought back when the construction concludes, but just to ensure that we minimised, where possible, the implications on local residents. If we can go to the next slide then, please, Julia. Cheers. So yeah, a bit of an update where we are now. So the super sewer is now operational and it's cleaning up the river. So as we sit here, all sites are connected to our new system, which means London and those that live and work in London are now protected or protecting the river for generations to come to reduce the levels of sewage. We're in an area called what we call storm testing. So we need to test the tunnel under various sort of operational circumstances. One of those circumstances is we need really big rainfall. If you like to fill the tunnel up, then drain the tunnel down via pumps at Beckton to see how the tunnel behaves. We've had a lot of rain recently, so we're kind of in that sort of weird world where I don't think we're quite ticked off the storm testing box yet, but we're certainly getting there. We're comfortable. Obviously, things are working as they should do. To give a sense of scale, since the system had its first connection, as it were, or the first CSO was connected to the tunnel in August 2024, so approaching about 18 months now of operational use, we've intercepted 16 million tonnes of untreated sewage. So if it hadn't been for the tunnel, that would have all gone in the river. So if you walk on the river foreshore, you take a boat out on the river, you walk up and down the river, you would have smelt it, you would have noticed it. And obviously to complement that as well, there's obviously all that being too crude, the solids, the litter, everything you can associate in sewage, that's now going into the tunnel. So that's the equivalent of 6,400 Olympic-sized swimming pools, if you see. So it's quite a lot of effluent or untreated sewage we've intercepted. If you can go to the next slide then, please. Julie, cheers. So those that are really interested can go onto our website to sort of see where we are with regard to construction updates, project updates and updates on our commissioning status. But we do have something called a live tracker. So everyone will say it's live. Typically it's updated once a month. So utilising flow rates at the bottom end of the tunnel from our Beckton pumps, we know how many metres or how many tonnes of sewage we've pumped from the deep shaft at Beckton up to the Beckton wastewater treatment works, and we periodically update this, typically on a monthly basis. As I say, we've intercepted to date since August over 16 million tonnes. So to put that into perspective, it's just over, it might even be approaching 4 actually, but just over sort of 3 Wembley stadiums full of sewage, to give you a perspective of how much sewage we've intercepted. So that's more, I suppose, a bit of an update, the construction side. So some of the benefits of the project might be hopefully maybe a bit more of an area of interest. So primarily the main benefit of the tideway tunnel is basically to improve the water quality, be that for recreational use, aquatic ecology, or those that live or work or have recreational use of the river. As I highlighted, it reduces, as well as the oxygen demand, as well as ensuring that there isn't the significant oxygen demand whenever sewage was discharged into the river, which obviously affects aquatic ecology. It reduces the sewage-related litter, be that plastics, be that sort of rags, or anything else you care to think that may or may not go down the toilet, really. Two key or a couple of areas on the website which you may be interested in, you might want to sort of look further in detail. We've just released basically a selection of impact reports that talks about different sort of positive aspects of the project, and also the legacy report, like the final legacy report of the project has just been published sort of at the tail end of 2025. So there's 2 links there to our website if you want to sort of investigate further, really. Yeah, if we go to the next one, thanks. So just sort of taking a couple of extracts from the legacy report. I won't go through every single one, but just to sort of put things into perspective. A lot of our spaces, due to the density of London, we've had to construct we've constructed new sort of areas of public realm that go out into the river, which is basically where the sewers historically discharged into the river. I'll show a couple of images of those going forward. But we've created around 3 acres of new public open realm across the project. We've helped numerous projects through our different volunteering exercises, encouraging sort of ex-offenders, return to workers back into work. One thing I'd probably highlight, which is again part of we've had a bit of a culture really about sort of transformational. If you can't do it safe, don't do it. So every single project member, everyone that's worked on Tideway has gone through something we call EPIC, which is the Employers Project Induction Centre. And it's a 1-day training event, but it's not training as we might know it. It's basically inductive sort of training. So we had a bespoke facility built there's a series of actors there, and all the attendees participate. So rather than just being an audience member that may or may not sit on their phone wondering when the training event is over, it's fully immersive. So there's a real event. It sort of shows you the build-up to a tragic event, and then sort of talks about how that event could be avoided by learning. So we've had over 26,000 people have been through that project's induction centre at the moment. We'd like to think that's pretty transformational. And also as well, when their role has come to an end on Tideway, they will have learned something and hopefully take that safety culture onto whatever next large or small construction projects they go onto in the future, really. So if you go the next one then please, Julie. Thanks. So as I highlighted, the visible legacy across London, so 7 of our sites we've constructed new public open realm out into the site. Now, as I highlighted, London's very dense, it's very densely populated, and these sewers, nature of Victorian construction, they discharge onto the river foreshore. So going from, we won't name each particular site, but our most western site that protrudes out into the river, if you're familiar with the boat race, and obviously the boat race is coming up in a few weeks' time, if you see the start line now straddles the new public open realm that we've built at Putney Embankment foreshore site. So that intercepts sewage that typically would have been discharged under the southern arts of Putney Bridge. The nearest to here, if you go sort of going up to Wapping on the other side of the river, is our King Edward Memorial Park foreshore sites. That's an existing park. We basically had the majority of our construction was in the foreshore by building new cofferdams. So our new shaft, our new hydraulic structures, all our new infrastructure, that is now built on what was foreshore, but obviously needs to be finished at a level above high water level, to hence a new structure that goes out into the river. So when that opens, that's one of our last public open realm sites to open to the public, which should be probably summer of this year. But members of the public can go out onto the foreshore, have a look at the river, maybe take in different metres or so deep. So if you go to the next slide, thanks. So this sort of shows some of our public open realm site. So top left, that's our Chelsea Embankment foreshore site, which is up near sort of the Chelsea Hospital, sort of midwest sort of London on the North Bank. Bottom left is an extract of our yet to be opened King Edward Memorial Park foreshore sites. And then what's shown, the larger image on the right-hand side, is sort of a nighttime view of the new public open realm that's been opened at Blackfriars. So if you walked across Blackfriars Bridge, take a look to your left, you'll see a large expanse of new public open realm. That's to house our new interception, our new shafts, our new chambers, our new hydraulic structures. Each of the public open realm sites is very specific, it's very bespoke, and it's been through numerous sort of design evaluations, consultations and sort of inputs, but primarily they all have public artwork as well. So if you are a keen art lover, go out there and have a look at some of the new art that's been installed as well. It's unusual, it's different and it's nice. If you go to the next slide then please. Julie, getting a bit more local, so at our Chambers Wharf site, Chambers Wharf site, the site we utilised for the construction, long term that will be turned into residential development. It has a live planning application on it which has been implemented. So 2 out of I think 6 blocks have been constructed. The remaining 4 blocks they will start effectively once we release the site to the developer that will take over after we've completed. But what we have included there is a intertidal terrace. So the top left image sort of shows the artistic sort of like the computer generation of what it will look like, the architectural image. And the 2 images on the right are sort of if you went out there this afternoon and had a look. So effectively it's a shelf, for want of a better word, that's in the upper tidal state, which means it houses different aquatic, different ecology, different plants. So at certain tidal states it floods, and obviously those plants are then obviously watered, if you see which improves aquatic ecology and aquatic growth, and then at lower tidal states it dries out, and it means that sort of it's available for different species to use really. So that gives us sort of flavour of what we've put in at our Chambers Wharf site. So only a couple more slides to go. So basically we've had obviously many stakeholders throughout the year, but I suppose from a project and personal perspective, some of the highlights are our Blackfriars site was opened by His Majesty the King in 2024, which was a bit of a surprise visit for a lot of the staff team that obviously took a lot of orchestration, a lot of organising, security clearance only on a need-to-know basis, but a lot of the guys and girls on site, they didn't realise when they put on their PPE that morning that they'd be meeting the King, and obviously he's a great I'd like to think he's a fan of the project, and obviously he's been very supportive of improving public and open realm and also improving sort of biodiversity and more importantly, improving the river quality. Top right image, which is a little bit maybe more local, which was our King Edward Memorial Park site over at Wapping. We had the Duke of Gloucester, another member of the royal family. He opened the site, as it were, or marked the finishing of construction in the tail end of 2025. And then in the bottom right image, it's Princess Anne, sort of effectively turning on one of the pieces of artwork at our Blackfriars site. You can see it's basically it's a waterfall sort of located behind it, but hopefully that gives a bit of a flavour of some of the stakeholders and some of the events we've had on the project over the years, really. So hopefully there's a bit of a 0 to 60 of the Tideway project and where we are. I pass back to yourself, Councillor Chair, to if there's any questions.
Thank you for that brilliant overview of the project. Really helpful to see how some of the public realm improvements, particularly across London, are shaping up. I think this is super helpful in terms of just some evidence to our Commission to take forward to think about how we might explore as a council how to make better use of the Thames foreshore. Now the sewer will be improving the water quality to the extent that you've described. So it's one we'll need to take forward. Are there any questions? Sabina, did you have any questions while we have?
It's really brilliant description. I can't take it out of my head. The tenants who lived along the river for your tideways, weren't you? Yeah, I remember. Did you invite them to the opening? Did you send an invitation to any of them, the TAs or any other community groups?
Do you mean specifically for the Chambers Wharf site or the other sites?
Just for the opening of this brilliant project.
Yeah, so Chambers Wharf we haven't sort of formally opened, we haven't formally finished construction yet, which is obviously the Southwark site. But at our other sites, yeah, there were different community events where people were invited along, if you sort of like to have a look at the public space, sort of share it. I think depending on which site it was, some sites had a lot more engagement with the local community than others because typically they were closer. So those sites, members were invited along to have a look at it. What we're looking at Chambers Wharf site, obviously we've had Chambers Wharf site historically has probably been our most controversial site in the project, and we've been probably in the closest proximity to local residents. We are looking to sort of see when we finish construction what we sort of do there to sort of effectively to say thank you. It's a bit weird, Chambers Wharf, as in we don't open the site to the public because the developer will take over after we do, but we are looking at what we can do to thank members of the community for sort of putting up with us, I suppose, for the last 10 years, if that's not too blunt.
Because I remember the people in Rotherhithe, when I was standing in North Bermondsey, they were complaining about the noise consistently. And I think, well, after putting up with all of that, they should be invited to see this finished product.
Yeah, well, as I say, we are looking at holding some sort of event sort of next year. I've got to agree to it, work out, I suppose, a budget and then invite the local residents. But we aren't just going to walk away. We are looking to sort of mark the occasion. Yeah.
And I appreciate this is not necessarily in your wheelhouse directly, but are there things that you've seen that other London boroughs are thinking about doing to make the best of the space that has been now provided in terms of the new public realm or the improved water quality of the river that you'd be keen to share with us?
Yeah, definitely. I suppose from a personal and project perspective, at Chambers Wharf, one thing we did do, we had a number of foreshore walks. So we got obviously we did a lot of work with MOLA, Museum of London Archaeology. So we commissioned MOLA to do they had to do different digs, or they conducted different digs during excavation, but we got some of their colleagues and also some of the local historians to do what we call foreshore walks. Effectively at low tides, we'd get a lot of kids and local residents out just to walk up and down the river foreshore, see what you can find. And it was really positive, and I think it was a real eye-opener if you saw to a lot of the local community, sort of about, you may just see a fragment of porcelain on the floor or on the foreshore, but you don't actually realise what it's for. So to have a local historian there that could say, well, that was a piece of pottery, that probably dates back to X, Y, Z. Yeah, that was really positive. And I know a couple of other local authorities have also thought, well, maybe now to sort of mark the foreshore being cleaner, being less litter there, maybe that's something that could be sort of be investigated. With regard to the areas of public open realm, different authorities view things from a different lens, maybe. So some of them have inquired about whether there's an opportunity to sort of use those foreshores for different events, pop-up cafes, different sort of facilities. Some of our foreshore areas, I'm thinking specifically maybe, there's a couple of them have got what we call kiosks in, whereby, say, Victoria, there's an opportunity there for maybe a third-party provider to open a kiosk that could be, I don't know, like an ice cream hut or something along those lines. But some local authorities are looking at, could they have a pop-up facility, i.e. a mobile coffee unit comes along, or a mobile ice cream van comes along and just sort of marks the space, and just, I don't know, every second or every Sunday or something that you can go down there for a cup of tea or coffee. But because we've only just opened those spaces and we're still in this world where we as Tide, we're still responsible for those spaces, and they haven't been passed to Thames Water or whoever will maintain them in the future going forwards. We're in this sort of weird world where we haven't been able to implement that yet. But I'd like to think long term the spaces will be used, or they will be used for positive uses. If not, it's now just people going to see the river, but for other more organised items, really.
Great, thank you. I'm really intrigued by the intertidal terrace concept as well. Is the Chambers Wharf site the only site where that's being developed?
Or now you're asking, I would say no. Let me think. So there are intertidal terraces at some of our other foreshore sites. So one that springs to mind is the Albert Embankment foreshore sites. So that's on the south side of Vauxhall Bridge. I think it's been quite challenging, some of the intertidal terraces, because it depends on how much exposure, the height, how much exposure you get to daylight and effectively the water, and then also the water consistency. So down this end we're quite sort of brackish. Obviously there's quite a sort of saline content in the water, so it's a good, as you go further upstream it's more sort of like a non-salt environment, if you see. So I know the teams have had challenges getting the right plants in the right locations, if you see. But no, Chambers isn't the only site. Albert springs to mind. I would have to check on other sites, to be honest, yeah.
No, that's okay, that's helpful. It's might be one we could have a look at and take a bit of inspiration from potentially. It's an interesting, innovative idea that I've not seen before from a developing biodiversity along the foreshore perspective, so thank you. Any other questions? Oh, sorry, did you want to...
On that note, it might be worth mentioning at our Chambers Wharf site and also our King Edward Memorial sites, rather than typically using, say, a flat vertical concrete wall, we've used textured concrete. So the aim of that is it improves biodiversity. So effectively it has a rougher surface, which means effectively all the aquatic ecology that lives in the river has got something to attach to. So it might go green in appearance a little bit quicker, but from an environmental perspective that's probably better, because it creates a habitat and environment where aquatic ecology can survive. Yeah.
Thank you. Sabina.
I still like walking along the river at night time. The boat people, have they been relocated or are they still there? The people who live on boats on the Thames, past Vauxhall going down, like you're going, when you turn to the left and you walk down that way, by the casino where it is, going down to Chelsea Bridge.
The majority, where possible, obviously there's a number of houseboat communities on the river. Where possible, we kept everybody in place. There are a couple of houseboats that we had to relocate near our Kirtling Street site, which is near Battersea Power Station. We're currently working with those owners to bring them back, because effectively we've now finished construction, so we're looking at reinstating whatever we took out. But from memory, I think it was 5 houseboats that were moved. All the other houseboats we haven't had an impact on, if you see what I mean, yeah.
Thank you. I've got no further questions. Any further questions? Thank you very much for coming along to talk to us. It's much appreciated.
No, thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you. So that moves us on to our next item. So we've got item 7, which is just an update on the Climate Emergency Action Plan. I think, John, you're back with us. Thank you for staying. And we also have Tom Buttrick, I think I'm right, saying Head of Climate Change and Sustainability. So if you're able to give a summary of the report and any overview or comments, and then we'll go into any questions.
Yeah, I can kick things off. I suppose the first thing to probably say is a lot of work by the team on this. I mean, a quick kind of recap. We obviously declared a climate emergency back in 2019. We launched our strategy and action plan in 2021, which really put us on the path to where we are now, but we've had a lot of learnings in that time. And so the commitment that we made back in 2021 was that we would review the climate strategy and action plan, and because of everything that we've learned, it was a good opportunity to update and refresh that. So probably over the last 12 months, maybe longer. We've been going through a really big process with every part of the council. Actually, it's been led by the climate change team, but it reflects everything going on across the council, every team and department, to kind of make sure that the focus is on the things that will allow us to reduce emissions and make Southwark more resilient and adaptable to the effects of climate change. So there has been really good progress in terms of our reducing emissions, our borough-wide emissions, and the work that we're doing to reduce our operational emissions across our leisure centres. But we know there's a lot more work to do. And so the refreshed strategy and action plan, I suppose there's a few things here, but it places more weight on climate change as a social justice issue. It places more hierarchy in terms of our action plan as well. So before we had over 100 actions, and they were all there was quite a flat structure in terms of what needed maybe greater resource, what needed greater priority. Now we have a kind of different structure in terms of our action plan. So there are an overarching action, and then lots of things under it that will help us achieve that action. So there's kind of more depth to it. And the other thing that we really wanted to do is kind of make sure that the community, local residents, businesses, community organisations, that everybody, that it was more accessible than it was before. And so we've done lots of work on that. I think there is certainly some work that the team will be leading on, which is outlined in this report, around making sure that all officers across the council are aware of their role and responsibilities when it comes to delivering climate action within their remit. So there's a really big piece of training. That's actually, I mean, it was in the pipeline anyway, but when we took this to overview and scrutiny back in September 2024, that was one of the bits of feedback for us, is that we need to make sure that, you know, actually everybody, whether they're working in highways and housing, cleaning, everyone is aware of how they can play their part in tackling the climate emergency. So that training will be really important. We're also, this week will be, we've got a council assembly where we'll be talking about, we'll be agreeing our annual budget. And part of that that we introduced last year, but will be taking a big step forward on this year, is the climate budget. So it outlines some of the projects that we've secured funding for, and areas where how else we could sort of reduce emissions further if we were able to secure that level of funding. We've actually been really successful, I would say, in comparison to other councils, in securing external funding, because we know that the council doesn't have available funding to deliver all this stuff. We are reliant on grants, and whether that be through central government or elsewhere. So the funding that we've got to deliver the leisure centre retrofit work, that came from the public sector decarbonisation scheme, around £10 million. So lots of really positive things that we've done in terms of securing external funding to deliver the things that we want to do. I'll maybe leave it there, because hopefully that provides a good outline, but I'm sure there's things I'll have missed, so I'll hand over to Tom for those.
Thanks, Councillor. I mean, you touched on a number of our successes there and the challenges we face. I'll just mention maybe two more, just because I think they're kind of appropriate for today. Particularly, today is the launch of round 3 of the Southwark Community Energy Fund, which is super exciting. We're going to be granting £400,000 to community energy projects which tackle emissions, reduce fuel poverty, and that builds on the last two rounds where we've allocated over £800,000 worth of funding to those community groups. We've had the community energy sector has really welcomed this investment, obviously, but actually it goes to show that it's really focused and meeting the needs of the community. So that's kind of a real celebration there. And then I think Southwark Green Investment, which is one of our projects that we've worked really closely with our finance colleagues. And we're currently we've raised over £2.5 million, and that's investment into the borough to deliver climate action projects. The current round is underway at the moment, and I think we checked this morning, it was at £943,000 of the £1 million target, and that closes at the end of this month. So yeah, I think only a couple more days really. But it goes to show there's the local appetite for investing in climate action in the borough. Local people can invest in that, get their 4% rate of return, etc. But it also means that local people are engaging in improving their neighbourhoods, making them greener, cleaning the air, etc. So yeah, Councillor Patterson highlighted the challenge we have around funding the climate emergency, but we are looking for innovation, we're looking for investment opportunities, and developing the pipelines for projects that we can then deliver.
Super. Thank you for that. Sabina, did you want to start with any questions?
Nice to hear you doing all of these things, but in terms of green energy, like you're saying, people ride bikes. I learned recently, thanks to that lady sitting over there, frightened me. And can you use some of that money to show the bike areas, especially in busy marketplaces where the bike, I'll come up with it. Say, for example, when you go to other boroughs, the bike areas are brightly lit. You would know that's a bike area, so you don't automatically step on it. But the ones on the Rye Lane, you cannot tell the difference between the road and the bike area, and so therefore it's very dangerous. So and it puts people off, because all you're hearing is complaints about the bikers and not embracing it as part of the progress. You know, it's nice to have a nice bike ride on a Sunday, or you use the bike lane to go, you know. At the moment, they just see the hazard, not the beauty of the climate change thing.
So I think certainly with regards to active travel, building more cycle highways, which we have done, and when we do that, it encourages more people to cycle. You know, the highways that we've installed across the borough have been really successful, and more people are cycling around, which is really positive. I think you probably raised quite a specific example there along Rye Lane, and I mean, I've cycled along Rye Lane as well. There are certainly challenges which we touched on earlier on in the previous agenda item here, in that there is a need to improve the bus times along Rye Lane. But I think there's also a need to think about the safety of cyclists as well. And so I think that absolutely needs to be part of the consultation that will be taken forward. But I agree. I mean, when the bike lanes, cycle lanes, they have been very safe in the most part. And even actually those that have been installed, we've been able to learn the lessons to make them even safer over time. So there is, definitely something there around but making sure that we install more where we can. They'll be used more. I think the specific example you mentioned along Rye Lane, we need to think very carefully about as part of the wider consultation along the road.
I'm not just saying it because it's the bikers. It has to do with health and safety as well for other people. And if the bikers are going to turn right and they don't realize it's a bike space because it's not signpost enough, although you have the cycle on the road, which is good. I see you bought some recently. They still because people go by memory. They don't remember that being there. But the color would pop out, and they will remember the color. That's basically what I'm saying. I'm not anti-bike, but it's some of the ways of the bike is dangerous. You know, I can put it that way, like the film says, the ways of water. One of the ways of the bike, and some of the bikers, they cut in front of the bus. They don't have that idea of community. Some of them in their head. Some are extremely good, but others doesn't matter.
I suppose, yeah, just to maybe come back and possibly finish off on that point. Obviously, the safest areas are where there's a designated cycleway. Obviously, that's not possible on every road, but because of the size of the road and how much space is needed. Obviously, the second option is that there is a designated. You have the cycle symbol on, but it's also you've got the kind of separate line that kind of, and there's a real there's that kind of separation, and cars know to kind of stay out. So that's the second way. Obviously, what again with Rye Lane, I think we should think about it as part of the wider, because one of the challenges along Rye Lane is the lack of space in terms of the buses, and it's on a high street.
It's not this. Sorry, it's not more or less the space. I mean, because everybody knows there's a bike lane there. It's just that you forget because you cannot see the bike lane. I mean, I go all over the country to meetings, or parties or whatever, and you're down Hackney, then you could see that's a bike lane. You go to Ilford, you could see that's a bike lane, but it's not a matter of space; it's a matter of highlight.
I think there are some really good examples across the borough, but I agree that we need to think about it as part of the wider work going along Rye Lane.
Thank you. And thank you for bringing forward the update on the action plan. I think it's really helpful to hear you call out some of the key learnings as well. So this is really hard. Don't have to tell you guys, because the cross council working. I mean, from what we've seen through this commission on, for example, our major report on play spaces, actually just getting all of the various departments working together to the same objective is hard, and so it's really good to see that this is happening, and there's some really good learnings from the initial work. So the better prioritisation and then sort of deeper action plan tiering that you described, the training as well around ensuring that different departments are providing the focus that this plan needs is really good to hear. Where are you've called out some of those learnings. Where are the areas where you're feeling really confident that we'll be able to address some of that and see some real progress and traction, versus where are the areas that actually, if you had some more funding, or you had more time or a bigger team, that you'd be going, actually we'd be doing this as well?
I can maybe start and then Brynju and Tom. So I think there was a lot of work done on the strategy and action plan in terms of the content, and I know Tom can maybe give a bit of an update on this in terms of the monitoring reporting, because that's the kind of one of the next bits really, is kind of setting up that process so it's really clear and transparent for not just people internally but externally as well. So there is some work that needs to go on around that. I think the climate budget, the way that we've done it, actually, we're doing it in stages over a 3-year period. This year is focusing on operational emissions. The following year is focused on housing, and the third year will be focused on our Scope 3 emissions, the things that the emissions generated from the things that we purchase, and it almost goes up, I would say, in level of complexity there really, because the operational emissions, we've done lots of work on the buildings that we know emit the most, or we have a plan for those. So Tooley Street is one of them. Our leisure centres are some others, and there's a whole range of work going on across those buildings. The next bit would be to focus on maybe smaller buildings that don't emit as much, but there's a lot more of them. So that would be a kind of challenging next action, but one that we'd probably be pretty well placed to tackle because we know what those buildings are, and it'd be relatively well placed to think about what actions and interventions might need to take place. Housing is clearly a big challenge. You know, we all know that in terms of the size of the housing stock that we have and the level of funding that sits within the HRA. I think the team have really been, and we have always focused on not getting. We could do a lot of reporting on this and like assessing and monitoring, but actually the true value of the team is in the delivery. So focusing on the things that we can genuinely deliver. And I think coming back to your initial point, I think the team would do a very good job at kind of facilitating other teams to kind of really consider what type of kind of action can be delivered in each of their departments. So I think where we're probably at the moment is sort of, and you know, housing. The challenge there is a financial one, but it's also kind of understanding the stock that we have, and there's a lot of work going on in terms of the stock condition survey. So we're kind of plugging into things that are already taking place, and that's a kind of important process as well. So there's a funding bit, there's a capacity bit, but I think it's really just understanding. And this action plan does do this. What are the things that will have the biggest impact when it comes to reducing emissions, but also what the climate strategy does, and the action plan places a greater emphasis on adaptation and resilience. Previously, there was probably a bigger focus on like how do we reduce emissions, which we are still doing, but we do also need to be very clear that there is overheating in the summer, there is more likelihood of floods in winter, and so how does the council respond to that, and how do we make sure that we are well prepared for those eventualities earlier on with the leaf clearing and the icy and winter periods. You know, we know that the houses are going to be a lot warmer in the summer now. We're going to have hotter summers, and we know that the weather conditions are likely to be more extreme. So as a council, we need to be asking ourselves whether we are set up and ready for all of those eventualities. So doing some really some kind of risk management in that area is probably something else we need to consider.
Yeah, that was a great answer. You touched on the climate budget, which is a kind of a real step change for the council to really embed climate action within its corporate budget, rather than just as a kind of a thing that happens outside it. And I think it's fair to say that housing will be, and as we move into Scope 3 emissions, that will be a big piece of work. In terms of procurement, we've actually got approval to appoint a new role from April for a sustainable procurement manager, which is going to really work collaboratively across the council to really seek out how we can use our buying power to reduce emissions in our wider carbon footprint. So we're really excited about that role. You touched on housing. I'll just mention schools as well. There's been such good work with schools. Schools now each have to have their own climate action plans. We know schools, the funding of kind of asset management in schools is a challenge alongside housing, but we're going to be working really closely with schools colleagues to really think about how we can support them as landlord in our statutory roles, but also how we can inspire the children to take forward kind of work within their schools as well. So that's a really important part of our role, and I think it maybe touches back to the kind of the original kind of request to come tonight, which is around how can we do that better internal engagement, and you touched on it, Councillor, which is really kind of embedding that everyone's a climate officer. It's just not in their job description or their job title. You know, we each have to take that public sector equality duty, fundamental to our role as public officials, and ultimately as climate change will impact the most vulnerable, those with protected characteristics. We need to just really make those links, and ultimately delivering climate action delivers those outcomes that some of the 2030s there to try and achieve. So really kind of telling the story
We're very good at jargon in climate change. There's often we're looking at the horizon about these big pictures, these big picture changes, but we are seeing the impacts of climate change being felt in Southwark last summer. We expected this summer. So telling those stories about local people and impacting their lives, and that's kind of going to be really key for that internal engagement, but also as we look externally as well.
Thank you. It's pleasing to hear the range of actions within here, because I think some of this is, as you've cited, it's essentially cultural change, which is really tough, right? Because everybody, it completely, versus then you've got very, concrete actions of we want to be driving down emissions here or want to be driving up resilience here. So it's good to hear that range. I was going to ask the question of, do you feel like there are any particular cultural barriers within the council, aside from building that sense that we're all climate officers, as you say? Are there any other particular sort of cultural barriers that you're encountering outside of that, or that you're thinking actually the training might not go far enough to address that? Or is it largely systemic? Is it largely finance? Is it largely structural? Just interested in your perspective.
I think it's fair to say that there are many parts of the council who totally get it. Climate change has been around for a while, particularly around emissions. I think there's a question around, and you'll see this in the action plan, about mainstreaming climate adaptation. And I think that's probably maybe, I wouldn't say it's a barrier per se, it may be just an organisational capability issue. Do we really get what a heat wave at above 35 degrees Celsius for 4 weeks means for the delivery of our services? Maybe. I think it's fair to say that we probably need to develop our capability as an organisation in that space, and that's one that we've recognised. I think one of the challenges we have is sometimes climate change is seen as it's something that I have to consider, but it's not a statutory responsibility around fire safety, for example. So it's one of those almost nice to have, but one of the things that the climate change team is there to do is to make that case for those wider benefits of action. And ultimately, it will save money in the long term, because the actual long-term costs are going to be greater. The challenge we have is making that case to the central government for that additional funding as well.
Thank you. I just had one final question, just around specifically the community energy projects funding. Does the council, are we also helping connect up those community projects with enabling areas within the council, so that I hear from residents locally, we'd love to be able to put solar panels on our council block, for example. Now that's clearly going to run up against challenges in terms of things like fire safety, but also HRA, maintenance revenue funding that would be needed to maintain that stuff. Are we taking that into consideration when we're allocating the money to those projects? Do we handhold them afterwards? How does that work? Just interesting.
I can probably go for this. I mean, the Community Energy Fund has quite a specific audience in terms of community groups, faith organisations, schools. I think the being out actually at a couple of we went to Youth Club, Westminster House Youth Club in Nunhead. They put solar panels on the roof. They put batteries. They've got battery storage as well, and because of that, they're able to. They basically brought their bills down to like 10 grand a year on their energy bills, which are really significant. Residential solar is certainly more complicated, and so I don't think we won't have funded any residential.
Not in terms of, for example, privately owned homes, but we have funded community energy groups in the borough to start exploring how we can unlock that. There's plenty of challenges in that space, so we won't go into too much detail, particularly around being able to use the electricity in homes. But one of the things actually that we're doing in round 3 of the Community Energy Fund launch from today is doing a call for ideas, which is looking for that innovation. To understand where the community energy sector is, what the challenges are, and how, as a landowner and as a facilitator in the community energy space, the council can start to really explore opportunities. We
often in the climate change team also get inquiries from residents, from TRAs. There's appetite, and we just have to facilitate unlocking that appetite, I think.
Super, thank you. I might have a name for you from somebody in Champion Hill that might be interested in that. So, go for it.
Have you all thought of building greenhouses so that they can grow stuff in the winter through the solar panel?
Yeah, no, it's not something I've seen directly, and obviously there's the community right to grow. We do lots of work with Ruth and Osseta in our community gardening team, and so there's lots of community groups in that space. In terms of using, for example, solar or other heat sources to heat greenhouses for your all year round growing, it's something that we can do. We're not to go on too much of a tangent, but we are looking at how we use heat networks across the borough as part of the various expansion of our heat networks, and that might be an output that we could see. There's lots of sources of heat that ultimately need funding to then use, and that could be an example. But yeah, something that we can take away.
Super, thank you. If there are no further questions, thank you very much for being with us. Really good to hear the update, and we'll leave it there. Thank you. Okie dokie. So that takes us on to our next item. We're approaching the end of the agenda. So next item 8 was around Play England. So Play England provided a summary of national evidence, policy developments and background context to inform the Play Spaces report that is in the agenda papers as well. So just noting that here. And item 4 of the cover report refers to a recommended study map. So the Play England Executive Director has advised that it's possible to generate a borough-level profile for Southwark, which provides a mapped analysis of playground provision, accessibility, deprivation overlays, child population data and distribution patterns. And this could be a useful evidence base for the recommended play strategy in the report that we also have on the agenda. But there is a cost to that as well. So it reflects structured data extraction, quality assurance and interpretation alongside the University of Sheffield research team. So this could be therefore framed as a recommendation within the report, which would be in addition to the draft that we've got in the pack here. So, for example, the Commission could recommend that the Council explore a places borough profile, as they're called, or similar evidence-based mapping to inform its strategy and future capital investment decisions. So we'll come on to that in the next item, but that's just for noting that evidence so we can capture it as part of the review report. So item 9 then takes us on to the Play Space Scrutiny Review report. So this is the culmination of several sessions over the course of this year by the Commission, and it's been circulated with the supplemental agenda. First of all, are there any comments or proposed amendments for the report, particularly the recommendations? So are we, Sabina? Okay, it's just us. Would you? It's all right. Would you? I'm keen that we factor in the additional recommendation from Play England around exploring similar evidence-based mapping or a places profile. Are you comfortable that we would include that in the report?
Yes.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you. Officers have been invited to ensure that the overall report is also accurate and may send amendments that will be considered post this meeting. But factoring in the additional recommendation that we've added, the draft report that we've got already, can we agree as a commission that the report and any amended recommendations be agreed with the understanding that minor amendments might be made later for accuracy? Are we happy to agree that?
Yes.
Super, thank you. So that's the report agreed. The final item then just is on the work programme. So are there any comments on the work programme that we've completed this year or any recommendations for the future? It'll be a new administrative year, a newly constituted commission that will take this forward. But are there any comments on things that we think the commission should cover next time around?
Not at the moment. I can't think of anything.
The only thing I had a thought on was on off the back of the tideway conversation this evening, it may be worth just capturing on the potential future work programme an idea around, is there a further, conversation that could be had maybe with relevant areas of the council around some of the benefits of the improved water quality of the Thames, how we might better use the Thames foreshore. Is there a strategy around that? So I think that, yeah, if you could pop your mic on. Yeah, that's a good build. Thank you. So that would be a good one to capture. Lovely. Okay. If there's nothing else, this is our final meeting. So just like to take the opportunity to thank all of the Commission for your contribution to the work this administrative year. And we'll conclude the meeting there. Thank you.